Everydayers knew it was coming. Dontayvion Wicks traded to the Philadelphia Eagles.
You are Locked On Packers, your daily Green Bay Packers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On Packers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm Peter Bukowski, and I cover the Packers for The Leap, a newsletter I would love for you to subscribe to. Thanks to everyone who makes Locked On Packers their first listen every day. We hope you like starting your day with us as much as we like starting our day with you here on the Locked On Podcast Network, the #1 sports podcast network. Dontayvion Wicks has been traded to the Philadelphia Eagles, something we have been talking about on this program now for weeks. That is why we have a special edition of the Sunday OT on a Saturday, which also means we have to bring in our pal Brandon Sneide from the Locked On Packers Squad Show, also Locked On Brewers Postcast, Locked On Bucks Postcast, which has, I'm sorry that you had to deal with that, Brandon. That just sounds dreadful lately, but this is not a surprise to anyone who has been paying attention to what we've been saying on this show, what we've been writing about at The Leap, what you and I have talked about on squad shows. There's just a numbers problem for the Packers at receiver. What did you think of this trade and the value that they were able to get?
I'm seeing a lot of Packer fans. I guess it's probably not to any surprise that once again want the moon and the stars for every single player that's on their team. But I'm sorry that I think it's good value. And I know I'm the Packer plant. I know I'm the Goody guy, and I know the deposit hit the account. But again, he's a former 5th rounder. You got a 5th round draft pick this year. You got a 6th round pick next year. You have some clarity, I think, in the receiver room as far as who you want to retain going forward, huge. As far as contract extensions. Correct. I would agree with you. And this isn't a knock on Wicks, because I think the skills are certainly there. The tools are definitely there. They haven't been all put to use yet, Peter, but he had career lows in games played last year, career low in receptions, targets, yards, and touchdowns. For the Packers to recruit what they spent on him a couple of years ago in the NFL draft gives them a little bit more flexibility, a little bit more ammo, gives them just a little bit more, right? For the draft, for a team that doesn't have a 1st round draft pick this season, it gives them a little bit more for this upcoming draft. And they are loaded. They are boat loaded for 2027 for that draft already. I think this is a good value. And I think this we all kind of knew this was essentially going to come. I think the surprise for me on any of it, if I'm being quite honest with you, is I didn't see the Eagles being the team that the Packers.
That's the thing I was surprised by too.
Yeah, so that's kind of where I'm at with that. But as far as value, I think, look, you got good value. Like, you drafted him in the 5th rounder, you got a 5th rounder. You had him for 3 years. And by the way, the Eagles are paying him $12.5 million. Like, so not only are you not having to eat any of that contract, but you are getting a draft pick, and they are paying Dontayvion Wicks. I think he can be a really good player. I think he's got to have a little luck fall in his lap, right? He's got to stay healthy. Like, he certainly has the wiggle to be a really good wide receiver in the NFL. We didn't see it all be put together in Green Bay, had some drop issues, but there's no doubt about this. What I like about this is this clears the path for Christian Watson. This clears the path for Jaden Reed. This clears the path for Matthew Golden. I don't think there was really any debate that Dontayvion Wicks might be in front of them, but there's no more confusion now. You know, those are your top 3 wide receivers going into 2026. So I think this is good for the Green Bay Packers as far as knowing, okay, this is who we have. And now we have the ability to potentially pay maybe one or both of the guys that are at the top of the list right now with Christian Watson and Jaden Reed, both of those guys on expiring deals this season. Not surprised. I think what the Packers got was good value. And I hate to break it to Packer fans, but you're not going to get a 1st round pick for every single player that you trade away. It's just not going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, let's remember DK Metcalf, who is a much better, much more established player, still only went for a 2nd round pick. So
correct.
This is not like some crazy thing here. I think we have to remember too, like, one of the things we talked about on the show is we talked a lot this offseason, I think too much for some people's liking, about comp picks, right? And the future. But they're going to add, they're a 2027 3rd, a 2027 4th, a 2027 5th, and a 2026 comp pick, plus the 4th from Rashawn Gary, plus this pick now for Dontayvion Wicks. They have money to spend in 2027. So they're not worried about comp picks for 2028 next offseason. They're going to spend the money. So if Dontayvion Wicks plays for you this year and then leaves, you get nothing.
Correct.
And this was the paradoxical relationship that they had at receiver, was they needed one, but they didn't have room for one. Like, if you look at the roster this year, one of these guys just had to go. And It obviously wasn't going to be Bo Melton because they would never do that to Matt LaFleur's son that way. But Matthew Golden and Savion Williams are under contract. They're the only guys under contract in 2027. We assume Christian Watson's going to get a deal. We don't know that for sure. So now you get value that you were not going to get for Dontayvion Wicks. I thought they could have waited maybe until the season. But if you do that, you already have to make your final 53 roster decisions. And so that makes this tough. When you look at this roster now, though, Brandon, like you mentioned, it sort of, I use the word streamlines. It clarifies, I think was the phrasing that you used, everyone's role. What kind of value do you think there is in that?
I think there's a lot of value because we saw it last year where it just got muddy in certain moments where, obviously you didn't have Christian Watson for the first 8 weeks. You didn't have Jaden Reed after week 2 breaking his collarbone. And after that, Peter, just kind of like, you didn't really know. Like there was times where Matthew Golden shined a little bit. There were moments where Dontayvion Wicks, who the Packers we talked about, was just traded, that they were able to use his skill set, certainly in the Thanksgiving game against the Detroit right before Jaden Reed comes back. But there was no set roles, no set, agendas for each one of these receivers. And I think now, everybody knows it. Like Christian Watson's that number one guy. Like I know it's Matt LaFleur's favorite question every single offseason or every single training camp. But like now he knows like that. Okay, we know that's his guy. Jaden Reed's going to be your number 2 guy. I think this takes a little bit of pressure off of Matthew Golden as well. Not saying, by trading away a wide receiver, he automatically gets that number 3 spot or number 2 spot, depending on how you want it to fall. But now he knows the expectations for him in 2026 and beyond have been elevated a little bit. And the Packers are expecting big things out of him. And I think that in itself holds value, in my opinion. These guys are able to identify now what their role is going to be. I will say this, and I hope this is true. I hope we can stop with the the evolving door with wide receivers with Matt LaFleur in the offense. Get your guys on the field and keep them there and put them in a position to be successful. We didn't see that enough. To Goody and Matt LaFleur's fault, I suppose. You had a bunch of them, right? Like you had a ton of them that were good in certain moments, but now I think the roles are identified and they can now hopefully excel in those roles because they're not going to be looking over their shoulder. They're not going to be wondering, man, if I drop this pass, like Dontayvion Wicks is coming in or Jaden Reed's coming in. Like now we know what their roles are. And oh, by the way, getting Tucker Kraft is also another reason probably why you traded away Dontayvion Wicks. Right. You have him coming back as well. So I think they're set up for that, just to have that clarity and to have those roles identified for each of those guys going into 2026. For them is going to be huge, Peter, but for Jordan Love as well. Now you just hope for the one thing that we can't control, that they can't control. You just stay healthy this season.
I have been advocating since the start of last season that they needed to just play their best guys. Just play your best players. Yep. Just play Christian Watson, Romeo Doubs, and Jaden Reed. Like just do that. And it seemed like in the playoffs, they kind of did that. And Matthew Golden was on the field a lot. Mm-hmm. And I think that tells you about what they feel about Matthew Golden. They still, for whatever underwhelming season you want to talk about him having, his underwhelming season was kind of right on par with all of Dontayvion Wicks' seasons, if you just look at the raw numbers. So what are they really losing there? And then here's the thing. I was looking at the Rich Hill trade value chart. We don't know right now as we record this, just minutes after this trade was broke here, but there's the Eagles have 2 5th-round picks. So they have 153 and then they have a comp pick at 178. The trade value is not that different, but let's say, even if it's the worst of the 2, that could be enough to get Green Bay to move from 52 to 49, which could be valuable without giving up their own pick, or from 84 all the way up to 77 in the 3rd round. Like that, there's real value in what you could potentially do there. And we know Brian Gutekunst is not afraid. Jordan Love, Jair Alexander, Christian Watson, Darnell Savage, he will go up and get his guy. And now they've got a little more cushion with some ammunition. We talked about trading up on the Friday show on Locked On Packers. Like, I think this is the kind of draft where you can be aggressive with those, if the weirdness of this draft breaks in your favor.
Timing is everything, because on Thursday night, we talked about, you brought up the point about you don't think the Packers might draft at 52. And I thought, well, where do you think they're going to go, up or down? And now you can go in one.
I did say yes, by the way. I said they could be either.
It's true. You did. Go back and listen wherever you get podcasts. And you're right. And now you have the flexibility. If that guy, if there's a cornerback, if there's a wide receiver, if there's a defensive tackle that falls in the direction of the Green Bay Packers, and now Goody has that flexibility And again, I will always tell people when it comes to the wide receiver position for the Green Bay Packers, and I think you would probably agree with this, Peter, most Packer fans probably would. Those are one of the few positions where I blindly begin to trust the Green Bay Packers and being able to identify talent, being able to develop the talent, 100%. And then being able to utilize that talent. We'd like to see a little bit more of that, putting your best guys on the field. And I think what Matthew Golden did, and you and I have talked about it, I know you have talked about it, I think what he did in Chicago gave the Packers the wild card game, which he was, if Romeo Doubs doesn't have a career day, he's the best receiver on that field during that game. I think what he did in that postseason game gave Green Bay the confidence to be able to go, okay, we know he's a first round draft pick. We had to see it a little bit. We saw some inconsistencies throughout the season, but now he did it at Soldier Field on the big stage for the Green Bay Packers for that season, and he was successful doing it. We were confident that we need to ship away one of these other wide receivers, and it happened to be Dontayvion Wicks.
All right, where do the Packers go from here with this receiver room? We're with Brandon Sneide on a Sunday OT on a Saturday next. It's tax time, but for a lot of us, the old way of doing taxes is, well, a lot. Trying to book an appointment that's not the most convenient, sitting in a waiting room with a stack of papers, emailing back and forth and wondering if they really get your situation. But this year, you're getting a major upgrade. Intuit TurboTax now has in-person locations nationwide. You can meet face-to-face with a real tax expert, and your documents get uploaded straight to your TurboTax app on the spot. And just like that, you're done. Your TurboTax expert works to get you every dollar you deserve, while you get real-time notifications as you go about your day. It's the relief of walking in and meeting a real person, and walking out knowing your taxes are being handled right. Head to TurboTax.com/local to find a store near you and book an appointment. Workplace chaos, deadlines stacking up, inbox overflowing, and the one position you have to fill still sitting open. When the pressure's on and you need the right hire, that's a job for Sponsored Jobs. Indeed, Sponsored Jobs helps you reach the people who actually fit what you're looking for. Skills, experience, location. So you're not just hoping the right candidate stumbles across your post. And here's a stat that says it all. In the minute I've been talking to you, companies like yours have made 27 hires on Indeed worldwide, according to Indeed data. So if you're hiring, spend less time searching and more time interviewing candidates who check all the boxes with Indeed Sponsored Jobs. And listeners of this show will get $75 in sponsored job credit to help get your job the premium listing it deserves at Indeed.com/podcast. Just go to Indeed.com/podcast right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? That's a job for Indeed Sponsored Jobs. All right, back here with Brandon Sneide on a Sunday OT, but it's a Saturday OT this week. Okay, so my first thought after I saw this, Brandon, was, does this mean Jayden Reed is getting a contract extension? Where does your mind go on that? Do you think that is more or less likely, or do you think they're not related?
I don't think they're related. I will say this, and you and I have talked about this. We brought it up on the squad show. Without question, Christian Watson is getting approached for a contract extension. Yeah. Goody brought him up by name at the NFL owners meetings, right? You mentioned him going up.
They love him.
In 2022 and going up. They tried going back into the first round that year. Minnesota wouldn't budge because they didn't want the Packers to have the fifth-year option and whatnot, and it turns out he had it anyway. But anyway, I'll digress. But I do think it's going to be Christian Watson. I think it's going to be Christian Watson, and I don't know if they're sold yet on Jayden Reed. Now, a week later, 2 weeks later, I can look like an idiot. I get it, but I don't know if they're yet sold on the durability of Jayden Reed. Now, last year, it was a freak injury on probably the best catch of his career, or at least up there, the best catch of his career. And again, week 2 against Washington. But I think without a doubt, it's related to Christian Watson. I think they want that to work out, whether that's the Alec Pierce deal or not. I think without question, the Green Bay Packers' priority is him, but yeah. I think it's Christian Watson. I think it's Tucker Kraft. I think it's 1A, 1B, and obviously the injury to Tucker Kraft is something we'll monitor, and they'll monitor going into training camp, going into the beginning of the year. I wouldn't be shocked if Tucker has sort of what Christian Watson had, like that 1-year deal. Don't rush back. Don't put too much pressure on yourself. But I think this is unrelated to Christian, but I think this is related to Jayden Reed. I think they want to see before they're going to give out another big contract, because there's so many other players lined up for contract extensions for the Green Bay Packers where, okay, if you want this, if we trust you're going to be able to do this, we need to see some consistency out of Jayden Reed. Now, Christian Watson, you could make the same argument with the injuries, right? But after week 8, Peter,
Watson's best has been better than Reed's best, though.
I don't know if it's necessarily close. He was PFF's a top 5 receiver for them from week 8 and on last year, and he just completely changes the way that offense looks, the 100%. Way that offense feels, the way they operate. So I think this clears the room. The Packers have tons of cap space. They have $22.5 million as we do this show right now. June 1st, they'll get a little bit more with the Nate Hobbs contract, and next year they're set up for success with a handful of contracts potentially being extended, and obviously the cap continues to rise. I think Christian Watson is absolutely going to get his contract extension, at least be offered a contract extension. But I think the wait and see is still out on Jayden Reed. Obviously, when you draft Matthew Golden, that changes things a little bit as far as what they can do and a little bit of more of the leverage, I guess you could say, for the Green Bay Packers. But is this also we've talked about this on this show. I know you've talked about it on the Daily Show. We've talked about it on the Squad Show. Now it's a need for the Green Bay Packers entering the 2026 draft. We mentioned a guy falling in front of their laps or potentially going up and get, or maybe falling behind in the draft. Like, could a receiver now realistically be on the table at 52 or sooner? I think you have to say yes.
I think you do. It's going to all depend on what their available options are, right? What I am frustrated with is what is going to be the perception now, Brandon, that this was a move aimed only at the future and not for now. And I just don't see it that way. I just don't. And you have to be able to hold two things that are true at once. The Packers were a more talented roster with Dontayvion Wicks on it. But I think they can be a better team without him because of what it clarifies for them and because of what it just like sometimes I feel like this was true of Mike McCarthy too. Sometimes Mike McCarthy needed fewer of his shiny toys to just streamline the offense a little bit. And I feel like Matt LaFleur has always been at his best. Don't you think this is true, Brandon? Like the offense without Davante Adams was just the same egalitarian style. He was dialing everything up, scheming. Aaron Jones scoring sluggo touchdowns against the Kansas City Chiefs.
A 7-1 record that year without him.
Yes.
It was something wild.
Yes. They were unbelievable without Davante Adams. And so and with Jordan Love, right? Without Jordan Love, they have been able to win and have successful offenses. That is Matt LaFleur. I just feel like he gets a little lost in the sauce, trying to get everyone in and trying to get a little too, like, just call the offense, dude. Like, just keep it simple, stupid. It is a cliche for a reason. And I think that is actually what Matt LaFleur was talking about at owners meetings when he was talking about stripping it down and acting like it's year one. Like, let's just get back to the basics, man. And that means playing your best damn players. And I think it just makes it so much easier. It also, though, you mentioned Jayden Reed. I mentioned Jayden Reed first. But I could see, okay, not in training camp, but October, November, if it looks like Savion Williams is just not it, and that could be, right? Mm-hmm. Like that was a heat check, I think, from the Packers. They were just sort of like, yeah, you want to see something? And like they did a cannonball off the high dive. And it could work out, or you could end up with a throat full of water, right? Like that it could be one of those kinds of things. And maybe he's just not it. And you go, they don't have, like, Matthew Golden can play from the slot. He can be dangerous from the slot. So can Christian Watson, so can Tucker Kraft. They don't have just spit the ball out to him in the middle of the field and let him go make explosive plays like Jayden Reed. Tucker Kraft can do some of that, can split the seam and do all those things. But like at a receiver position, a guy who could turn a 5-yard over route into 50, Christian Watson can do that too. But in terms of like the scheme touch game and all that stuff, end arounds and jet sweeps and orbit motion, it's Jayden Reed. And really that's it. So I could see them saying, look, it turns out this swing we took with Savion Williams is not working out. Let's lock Jayden Reed in. And we've seen Jayden Reed be really good in this offense. Like we've seen him be really, really good. 2024, Jayden Reed was, I think you can make the case, the best receiver, maybe even wide receiver 1 on this team. And so like the idea that he's injury prone because he got hurt one time, it just does not align with the facts here. I know that you do not get as deep in the weeds with the receiver stuff in the draft generally, but is there a type of receiver? You don't have to give me a name, but is there I can maybe give you a name if you build me a type, like let's play a little dating app game. Is there a type of receiver you'd like to see the Packers bring in?
Well, Christian Watson, as it sits right now, right? Their only receiver, only 6 foot, right? I suppose, like, I think Jayden Reed and Matthew Golden are probably
Savion Williams is 6'4", but of the starting group,
out of the 3, yeah. I cannot help, and I've said this before on the show, I have fallen in love with Bryce Lance. Like, I have fallen in love
You did say that
with that type of receiver that can go up and get that 50-50 ball, that can beat you in so many different ways. It, obviously, the NDSU, you got Noah Pauley now there in Green Bay as the wide receiver coach. Like, it's the Christian Watson success route, you know, from NDSU to Green Bay. I have fallen in love with Bryce Lance, and obviously Ted Hurst is another one of those guys that's going to go up there and is give me that ball type of attitude. That's the one thing I think this Packer team needs. And we got it with Tucker Kraft, right? From the receiver position. I don't know if Jaden Reed and Matthew Golden fit that mold. You want Christian Watson to fit that mold because, my God, he's you know, built from heaven. Like, you're able to go and do whatever you want to do on a football field. Like, go make it happen. We haven't seen it yet. I want a type of receiver that mental, that dog that just is going to go out there and I'm like, I'm going to get this ball and there's nothing you can do about it. Ted Hurst is that guy.
Ted Hurst is that guy, man.
Ted Hurst is that guy. And again, I think this is back in play for the Green Bay Packers in round 2. I really do. And I think if maybe you get into those mid 40s, upper 40s, as you mentioned, if one of those guys falls, and I think there's a possibility that they both are there, that Brian Gutekunst uses one of those picks or one of those picks in 2027. Those are the two guys that I have fallen in love with as far as the NFL draft goes, as far as adding them via draft, because those are the guys, Bryce Lance with the speed and the size, with him and Christian Watson and Matthew Golden on the field. I don't know how you defend
Ted Hurst too, ran low
Kraft
fours.
and Ted Hurst is in that conversation too. So I know you're talking about building one, but those are the two that I immediately go to.
You had names. You had names ready to go.
Yeah, those are the two I go to.
I don't think you need to use 52 to get one of those two guys.
I don't think so either. But I think,
again,
I don't know how it's going to fall.
Based on consensus right now, based on, you know, Todd McShay's mock and the Beast and those kinds of, like, Lance has fallen down a little bit for whatever reason. Ted Hurst has fallen down a little bit for whatever reason. I don't understand it. I think they're both very good players. I happen to like Ted Hurst significantly more, but I like Lance. The speed and playmaking is obvious. I think at 84, like, that's kind of the sweet spot to me, because it sounds like Dejon Stribling is going to go earlier than we thought. And so maybe you can't wait until the 4th round, but maybe you can get a really good corner, let's say in the 4th round, or a defensive tackle in the 4th round. Let's say you get one of your top needs, DT, corner. I think corner at 52 is still probably where they're going to look. Then you got to wait, because there just aren't any other defensive tackles. Like, if Dominique Orange is off the board in the 3rd round, you're kind of SOL with defensive tackle. Then in the 4th round, like, if we just wish casted here for a second, Brandon, let's say in the 2nd round, they find a corner that they like. Malik Muhammad, Dylan Everett, there's a lot of different guys that it could be in that range. And then at 84, you get Ted Hurst, and then you get Caleb Proctor in the 4th round. I mean, let's go.
Yeah.
Let's go.
Where's the wall so I can run through it?
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. So I like this is where the draft is the strongest, between rounds 2 and 4. Them adding a 5th round pick allows them to have some maneuverability going into all those places. And I think they can really solidify what they've got going here. Go ahead.
Let me ask you a quick question. Let me turn this right back on you. And I know it's your show. Do you think Goody saw this as far as, like, the talent, you know, in these drafts not being the top tier in that 1st round, when he decided to trade away those 2 1st-round picks in order to acquire Mike? Now, you probably would do it anyway for Micah, right? But, like, the drop off, like, there's a lot of rumors, a lot of whispers that a lot of teams are looking to kind of move out and move back in this draft and grab more picks, because the talent is more evenly spread. It's not top heavy like we saw in years past. Do you think that is something that the Green Bay Packers took notice in when they're looking at these prospects?
I think it helped. It helped. Like, you know, it's a little bit like, you know, you're planning a vacation and you're just sort of like, okay, well, there's a 10% lesser chance of rain at, you know, this time versus the next week. Like, they were going to go on vacation no matter what, but now it's about the timing. Like, I think it probably was a fringe benefit, but usually we think of quarterbacks. That's usually when front offices are looking like, okay, do we invest in quarterback this year or next year? And everyone agrees next year is the year to need a quarterback. The Packers don't. So I think they knew going into the season, because you've already got some of the reports on rising seniors and those kinds of things. But I think that was just more Micah Parsons is Micah Parsons. And you just do, I don't, Fair. It could have been the 2014 draft. And I think they would have said, yes, please, we'll take Micah Parsons. Thank you very much. And then, oh no, you miss out on drafting Clinton Dix, but instead you get Micah Parsons. Like, they do that 500 times out of 500. All right. We're going to have, instead of the Sunday OT on Sunday, we will have an episode of Goody's Guys. The Sunday OT on Saturday this week. Brandon, appreciate you jumping on early with me to get this all ironed out. Dontayvion Wicks, now a member of the Philadelphia Eagles. Subscribe to the podcast wherever you get podcasts. Subscribe on YouTube. Watch us live. We're live 3 times a week now on the Locked On Packers channel. 2 squad shows, our Sunday OT. We've got draft plans, all kinds of great stuff. Subscribe to the podcast, I said, wherever you get podcasts. Me and Brandon on the socials. Come find us on the socials, wherever you are on socials. And as always, stay Locked On Packers.